So here we have this clip of this little bird, and I'm going to drag it down onto my timeline using the overwrite function. And automatically it will give me around 5 seconds of the clip. So that's good. Of course, you can reduce its length by dragging the corners of the clip onto your timeline. And so if we wanted to start out, let's say, showcasing these photos that I have here, how can we create a dynamic showcase of our photographs using video and using keyframing? So first off, I kind of don't need these black bars on the sides. So first of all, I'm going to stretch my image to make it fit on the monitor how I want. So one option we could do to start off our video is to create a fade in, right? And the way we can do that is we could go to transitions and add a fade, which would add our intro just like that. But what if you wanted to have maybe a little bit more control, or if you wanted to do it manually, because there's some sort of satisfying kind of there's a je ne sais quoi of doing it yourself. So on the left side bottom pane, we have the properties pane. And in the properties pane is where we'll see all of the elements that we can add keyframes to. And so this little shape right here is the keyframe that you can add on any given point of your clip. And as you can see, if I move my slider on my timeline, the slider on my left also moves. So they're connected. So one simple way to start is to do the fade in we were talking about. So how do we do that? Well, the opacity is the characteristic we want to change in this situation. And the way we can do it is, let's say I want the fade in to take 10, what would this be? This is not 10 milliseconds, I think it could be. I'm not so sure. Oh, maybe let's just try a second. There we go. So if I want my image to be shown in its full opacity at 1 second, I place my cursor at the second, and then I add a keyframe. And so how I can make it work is to go backwards now. And in the beginning of my clip, just go to the opacity level and type 0. Once you do that, LUXEA will automatically add the 0 keyframe on opacity, and it'll create the fade in. So what other way could we make this more dynamic? Why don't we make this a little bit longer? We can play around with scale. So this particular bird has a really nice look on his face, and kind of want to get closer. So the way we can do that, again, is to kind of choose a moment in our clip where we want the maximum scale of our image to be at. And then, Norman, if you have a question, just leave it in the comments or in the chat, and I'll get right to it. So how about there? As you can see, whenever I move my clip on my monitor, the values on the properties pane change. And so right now, my clip is in that exact position with 154.5% of scale. So if I make it bigger, the scale starts growing up, and I can also just type my percentage I want. So what if I wanted 300? That's cool. It might be a violent zoom in, but let's just give it a shot. So now that I've edited the position and the scale of my clip, I want to add some keyframes. And just place them. I guess there's a lot of trial and error. So it doesn't matter if you don't place them correctly in the beginning. You can always move them left and right and slowly adjust the way you want your animation to happen. So why don't we just take a look at that? So I added keyframes with my scale being at 300 and my position being in 153 and minus 309 on the X and Y axis. And if I want my video to begin with the normal size of my image, all I have to do is type 100. That will add my keyframe. And then in the positions, I can just type 0, 0, and 0. So that is the original size of our photo, but I don't want the black bar. So I'm just going to move this, adjust it there. And so all of the adjustments that I just did, I did them on the exact same spot where my keyframes are. So whenever I do this, my keyframe will also change. So what if I drag this now to the beginning? What do we have? We have kind of a fast zoom in into our bird's eye. And I don't want it to be so dramatic. I just want it to have a subtle zoom in. So I'm going to reduce my scale to 130, reposition my clip, and drag my keyframes slightly to the right because I just want a slow zoom in. So let's see how that looks. That's a lot better, a lot smoother. So cool way to do this is to play around with dynamics. So if my video is starting with a slow zoom in, I could continue it with another image and do a zoom out to reveal what's happening in the background. Is this a finch? Could you guys, could the bird photographers help me identify the bird? Okay. Munia. Muni. Cool. Wow. It's kind of interesting to think about what is it about birds that fascinates us so much, right? I read the other day that chickens are actually like the closest relative to a dinosaur that we have living today. Well, anyways, so now as you can see, I've adjusted how my image on the timeline, how I want it to start. And now I'm going to create a zoom out. So going from a zoom in to a zoom out. And because I edited the position of my clip there, all I have to do now to keyframe that is to click on add keyframes on my position and on my scale, because those are the things that I'm editing. Like I could rotate, I could crop it, but I don't want to do that right now. But you can also animate those characteristics or elements of your photo. So now I'm starting at 133 in my scale, and I'm going to drag this a little bit to the right, and I'm going to bring back my scale to 100. And this to 0, and the Y to 0. I'm going to expand it slightly again so they don't have any black bars on the sides of my image. I'm going to move my last keyframes to the right to have a slower zoom. And now we can see how that looks. A little bit too fast for my taste, but still, let's reduce the scale we added, just 120 or 125. How does that look? That's a little bit better. I also downloaded forest sounds. Ideally, you want to, if you guys, you're out and about and you're taking photos of nature or birds or, I always recommend just capturing some sort of sound clip with your phones or your camera, so you can add them to your photo slideshow. It just makes the whole thing sound so much more alive. Can you guys hear the sound of the forest? No. Okay. Let's see how we can fix that. So I'll just stop sharing. Here we go. Okay, let's see if we can hear the sound now. Yep. Cool. No sound. Maybe I'll turn I'll turn it up a little bit. And I'll turn it up using keyframes. So now I have my sound clip selected. And I'll just mark my first keyframe at 0. And I'll increase it to, is 30 a crazy value? Maybe. Oh, actually 12 dB is the maximum it goes. So let's see if that makes any difference. Yeah. Let's add one more bird. And again, if you guys have any questions, just let's add this beautiful peacock right here. Remember, if your clips are extending the size of your timeline, all you have to do is click right here, zoom to fit timeline, and then all the clips will adjust to your view. So now I've extended my audio clip, and I could maybe, just to change things a little bit. Yeah, of course we can. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to have a little bit of a left to right movement on this one. Very subtle. So I'm just going to place it around there, the beginning of my clip, add my keyframes. select my keyframes, drag them to the fully to the left. That's all we can. There we go. And then move my slider and move my image a little bit to the right. And because I already selected my keyframes, whenever I make another adjustment in another part of the timeline, this will automatically add another keyframe to it. So now I have the image of my peacock slightly moving to the left. If you want to add dissolve transitions, just go to the transition menu on the top and select fade. Now we can add fade between all of our images. So if you noticed, because our clip or our keyframes end where our clip ends, but because we have a fade transition happening, the fade transition is not picking up on the movement, on the zoom that we have our previous photo. Are you guys able to notice that? It takes a while for the second image to start moving. Hey, Marv, no, not be embarrassed. Maybe I'm going a little bit too fast. Yep, so a keyframe, like keying, I guess, is, and I guess I'm not 100% on what exactly it means, but the whole idea is that there are certain frames in your image or in your video or in your clip that you can add specific levels or characteristics. There are no bad questions, exactly. So for example, this keyframe right here, if you look at the properties pane on the bottom left, this keyframe has the information of opacity being at 100%. So, and this other keyframe has the information of opacity being at 0. So the keyframe, what it is that it's a specific, maybe level is not the right word, but it's the specific amount of the element I'm trying to edit. And so if I move this keyframe that has 100% opacity to the right, then the range between my keyframe that has 0 and my keyframe that has 100, this range, it will take longer for it to go from 0 to 100. And if I move it to the right, it'll take even longer. Values, that's the word I was thinking about. So the keyframe is a specific value added to a specific part of your clip's timeline on a specific characteristic like opacity, like scale, like position. Yeah, it's a point in time that defines a certain property for times thereafter. Exactly. I mean, but also, like if I have if my last keyframe here is in 100, then everything that happens to the right of it will just keep that information. So it's what's going on in between two keyframes that will determine what's happening in your clip. And after the last keyframe you've added, everything that happens to the right just stays the same. But I could change it. I could just, for example, bring my opacity to 0 again. And I added a keyframe with my opacity being 0. And then just right after, I could bring it back to 100, and it'll be really weird. But maybe the principle is clear. And it did this kind of flickering. And I could do it all the times I want. I could bring it back to 0, and I could bring it back to 100. And so I'm playing with time and the values to specific points in my clip. So there we go. If you, does that make more sense? Apologies for not, trying to. Yeah, totally. It's also that. It's a start and stop, but those start and stops have certain values added in them. Well, the rate, you're talking about keyframes or transitions, because the transition, for example, I added fades here. You just, by selecting the fade, you can just expand it or bring it closer, right? Well, transition between keyframes, all you have to do, if I wanted to have a very fast fade in, for example, my last keyframe that has the opacity at 100%, I could just drag it really close to the keyframe where the opacity is 0, and I would have a really fast fade in, like that. But if I drag my last keyframe to the right, now it'll take a lot longer for that fade in to happen, and it becomes smoother. And so, just so that you can also notice how you mark, like, I think key hurt, I think said, is the start and stop point for an event. As we saw in the beginning, I am zooming in on this image, but after I pass my last 2 keyframes that have the information on scale and position, then there's no change going to happen. And I'm just going to remove my fade so that it's clearer. So, and I'm also going to remove my fade in so that it's clearer. So now I've removed all keyframes in opacity, so we won't have any sort of fade in, and we just have a scale and position change. So if I drag this to the left, I'll have a really quick zoom. And then right after it reaches this keyframe, these 2 keyframes, the movement will stop, because there's just no more keyframes later to go on about. If I wanted, for example, I could also zoom in quite a bunch, let's say 160. And what I'm doing just here, I'm just selecting the values on scale and just moving them left to right. So I'm going from my scale from 118 to 145, and now I'm bringing it back down to 120. And what that will do is we'll have a zoom in, zoom out, because the information is changing because of the keyframes. Like that. Yeah. So why don't we end? Maybe an interesting way to end our little video here is by adding some crop marks. And I've actually never tried this, so we'll see. I kind of want to reduce my image to have this sort of more cinematic anamorphic feel maybe. So as you can see on my pane on the bottom left, I'm moving the values of crop. And if I drag my crops to 34 on the top and on the bottom to 88, I have this sort of anamorphic kind of feel. And I can also keyframe that. So now that I've changed the information on my crop values, I can add a keyframe. And I'm moving backwards. So I'm actually like adding the effect I want, and then I'm bringing it a little bit to the left and putting these values back at 0. Whoa, that didn't work. So that should be 100. And now I have those kind of black bars entering the frame like that. And I could even just completely end my clip like this. Let's see if that works. So again, the whole principle is play around with the values of keyframes and move them around to see what happens. If you want to delete them and start again, just select them like that and click on delete, and that will change. That will bring you back to how your clip originally was. Okay, so again, if you guys have any questions, please just leave them in the chat. I want to do something a little bit more adventurous, let's say, because yeah, I could zoom to just a peacock eyeball. Totally. That's, you know, and that's why keyframing is cool, because you can, with your own photos, you can precisely select what sort of animation you want to create. And you can create a story that way too. You could, let's say, you could do like, you could start all of your images zoomed in on your subject's eye and kind of zoom out, and you can replicate that on all of your photos, and then you'd be telling some sort of story of telling every photo starting on the eyeball of your bird and then zooming out to reveal the whole picture. Yes, good question, Martin. So I am going to delete all of my keyframes on my other shots. Can you guys hear me? Okay. That's a good question, Antoine. And I'm pretty sure we can edit that as well. But to answer Martin's question first, I have this zoom in already, or zoom out already established in my image. And if I wanted to copy that and place it on all of my images, just going to delete my keyframes here. All I have to do is select the first clip where I have my keyframes edited, right click on your clip, copy or Control C, and then on your next clip, right click and select Paste Properties or Control Alt V. And after doing this, you will see that you can select the position properties, the opacity properties, the scale, the everything, and click OK. And that added exactly the same keyframe edit to my next image. Same thing here. Paste properties. And I'm just going to select all of the video properties. And now they've been added to all of my images. So that can save you a lot of time. Yeah, good one. Okay, Antoine asks, how to change the speed of zoom from linear to, say, exponential? Yes, well, there is a speed choice here too. But I'm guessing that because it's photos, it's not showing me that particular option. What if I right click? Clip speed. Yeah, maybe there's a limitation on JPEGs to create that sort of speed choice, because in video clips it definitely works. So, but I'll take a look at that, Antoine, and get back to you, because it should be able to work no matter if it's yeah. And like, for example, let's see here. Yeah, I can't seem to be able to edit from linear to exponential, but let's move to video to see how we can do that. So I'm going to movement of image stops when there is a fade. Yeah, well, so here's the thing. Before we move on to video, and I'm just going to make this shorter so that it's easier to see. Okay, so I have my zoom in, zoom out, right? And my keyframe for the information of the last zoom out position is right at the end of the clip. Then if I add a transition, the zoom out will stop as soon as I reach my second clip. But because there's still part of the first clip at the tail of this fade, and there's no keyframe information there, then it'll be static, and the fade in, fade out, zoom out will stop. And you can see it gets a little bit static, either in the beginning of or end of the first or second clip. And so the way to change that is extending your clip past the point of fade, right? So just to make it clear, our zoom out end, it can be solved by changing channel, but if you extend the keyframe beyond the end of your fade and then bring your clip back, your keyframe will still be here in this part. And so even if you don't see the clip, there's still zoom out happening right here. So if I add my fade now, my image in the back will continue to zoom out. And same thing here. If I extend this clip to the left and drag my keyframe fully to the left, bring my clip back here, this should work, hopefully. There we go. Now there's no stop in movement. It's just a smooth zoom out on both clips, which is really nice. It's very satisfying. Okay, so this is going to be cool because hopefully it will also kind of have an influence if you've decided to move on and do video. You could be thinking about how you want to edit your video thanks to keyframing while you're shooting a video. So I have this little clip that I recorded here in Victoria from these guys. They're doing some sort of race. So the shot is just a normal still shot. I will go over in sound keyframing. Sound keyframing, the possibility we have is the same. It's like you can we'll do it on this video. Don't worry. So I'm going to select this part of my footage right here. Once I know the camera is steady, select my in point, and my out point will be when everyone is out of the frame. And I'll add my video right there. I'll fit it to the timeline. I'll drag this a little bit up because I like to have it up here instead of down there. And we're going to tell a little bit of a story with keyframes. And it's all going to be done with scale and position. So I'm going to make this a little bigger. So our video starts with the wide shot. And then I want to quickly zoom in to the guy that's first in position. What I have to do is mark my keyframes right where I want the zoom in to start. So for now, I've added these keyframes, but I haven't changed any value. So I'll move a little bit to the right. And I'll zoom in to 300%. And I'll place my center. I'll place the first guy right in the center of the shot. Then I'll move my clip a little bit to the right. And I'll move the clip so that I can stay focused on our first guy. Okay. This is going to be a little trippy, but hang on with me for a second here. Then I'm going to move a little bit to the right on my timeline. And I'm going to focus on the person who's second and put it in the center of the frame. I'll move again slightly to the right, and I'll reposition him in the center. Then I'll move slightly to the right, and I'll position another contestant in the center. I'll move slightly to the right, and I'll place him again in the center. So what's going to happen is that we have this wide shot, and then we're going to start focusing and tracking each participant, thus creating some very interesting, kind of cool edit with just one clip and no cuts. So After I've tracked this guy in the yellow canoe, I will zoom out to my original values. Place them again in the center. Add a keyframe. Move slightly to the right. Reduce my scale to 100. Back to the original size. Replace it in the center. Let's see what happened. Post-operative camera edits exactly. Let's see. It might look choppy. Let's take a look. This is cool. There we go. Isn't that cool? You can just record one shot anywhere. It could be like a farm. It could be, you know, a music show. And then you can just, because this is recorded in 4K, you can safely zoom in into different objects of your image and not lose so much quality, but still be able to tell a pretty cool visual story. So this is, I encourage you guys to go out and record with your tripod, just a general open wide image, and then try to play around with keyframing and positioning. Ideally, you don't really need 4K. The cool thing about 4K is that because it has better resolution, when you're zooming in, and let's say I export this video on 1080p. If I zoom in 300%, then I won't lose so much quality. If you're recording in full HD, then if you zoom in at 300%, you might lose a little bit more quality. Exactly. The higher the resolution, even, I mean, I think some cameras are recording 8K right now. So that's pretty crazy. You can zoom in quite a bunch and tell a story in video with just one shot. Well, I haven't done that, but for example, you could go frame by frame, because if you notice here, we're kind of stabilizing on and tracking each participant, because this keyframe right here, my second keyframe, I have my person here in the center, and after moving slightly to the right, I replace them in the center. We're sort of tracking him and stabilizing our shot with one particular kind of point in our image. So you could totally go, yeah. So for example, if you have a hand shot video of a bird on a branch, you could go frame by frame. It'll be a little bit of a workout, a video editing workout, but you could place let's say the eye of the bird in the center on every frame, or every other frame, and then you would kind of stabilize your footage by having your bird in the center of the image all the time. And I can totally change the speed of my clip by going to speed, and I can make everything slower by dragging it to the left right here. Of course, I can maintain. So now everything is slower, but I've reduced the resolution of my playback just to make sure that, you know, nothing crashes. There. So now the video is playing at 0.58 of its original speed. So yes, there are keyframes for speed. And for that, you just have to, because this is the uniform speed. And I'll bring it back to 1. And if you want to keyframe the speed, you just go to speed ramping right here. And let's say I just select whatever, montage. And these guys are your keyframes. So if I want my video to start with 1, which is like normal speed, I could increase it to 5x right here. Reduce it to 2.5 right here. Like that. So, you know, that's the way you can edit the speed of your clip fully, or by keyframe. So someone was talking about audio. Let's bring another shot in. Oh yeah, something that's also pretty cool. Well, first I'm just going to select with my in and out what part of my image I want. And I know I have this family walking. Again, as you can see, like I do have a lot of fun just taking really wide shots because I know that I can play around editing after. You can also keyframe effects or filters. So if I go to filters and, for example, let's say I want to select color LUT, for example, the film LUT, which adds this really cool blue tones to my image, I could also keyframe the effect. So I've selected my film LUT and it has an opacity of 100%. I'll bring it down to 0 so that I have none of my color LUT. I'll add a keyframe. I'll move slightly to the right, and then I'll bring the opacity of my effect to 100. And now I can see how the effect is applied on my shot. I don't know, but there's a lot of how. Sorry about that. I'm going to mute the clip. Reduce playback a little bit. And there, we could slowly see how the effect was applied on our shot, which is really awesome. To make it more evident, I'm going to make the transition from 0 opacity to 100 opacity quicker so that it's easier to tell when the effect is being applied. Zoop. There we go. So, and you can just get creative, which is the awesome thing. Like, I start my shot, the effect is added, and then let's say I want to zoom in. I'll mark my keyframes, scale and position, play the video for a little bit. Now I've advanced in my timeline, and I'll increase the scale to 200 so that I can center my subjects. And then I could track them, track their movement. So I'm going to move to the right, and I'm going to reposition them in the center of my frame. Let's see how that looks. It zooms in, and then it starts tracking them. And so if you want to be really precise with the tracking, you can select more keyframe points, right? So here, I could move right there. And it seems like on this particular moment, bring them to the center and just keep going like that. Advancing a little bit, bringing them to the center, advancing a little bit, bringing them to the center. And then now an important thing, if I wanted to zoom out again from this moment, this might happen to you. So let's say we've tracked them for a little bit. And now to finish my clip, I want to zoom out back again to show the full shot. And so what I'm going to do is reduce the size to 100. And so that I can showcase my shot fully. But what will happen is that my zoom out will get a little, as you can see, we've started zooming out a lot sooner than what I wanted. I wanted to stay tracking them in the center, but now I have this very slow zoom out happening. And it's like, what the hell happened, right? And it's because I've changed the position keyframes all along the video, but after I zoomed in on them, there's no other keyframe. I mean, after this point, it starts zooming out to 100 through all of this area of my video here, which is what I don't want. I want it to start zooming out since my last keyframe in position. So So to fix that, I have to add another keyframe. And now the zoom out will happen starting from here. So before it was, the zoom out was starting from here, and now it's only at the end of my clip, which is just what I wanted. And I'm going to extend this a little bit more so that I have a smoother zoom out. Just take a look at that. So now I'm staying with the family, stabilizing the motion. And it just becomes so fun, very relaxing. It adds a lot of dynamics to just one shot. And man, you can spend hours playing around with this stuff. It's really cool, which is why the software opens up just this world of possibility in video editing that just wasn't, happening before. And I could go to my effect again. And at the end of my clip, I could mark another keyframe with 100 and drag my cursor to the very end of my clip and type 0. And that will bring us back to the original visual value of, or like unfiltered video. Yeah, I've actually, well, why don't we try this? Like, I have this clip. One thing that I was really into like a year ago or something was tracking birds flying, because how cool would it be that you can like fully follow a bird's flight on video? And I have this really wide shot where I think it's a seagull right there. As you can, like, it's really there, like in the background, but let's see if we can track it. We're going a little bit over our time, but it's fine because this is good stuff. So, and it's a little bit overexposed. So I think I'm just gonna make it a little darker. I'm gonna go to my exposure filter and just reduce it slightly so that I have more information on the top. I guess I could also add some light EQ. Is that better? Maybe that's a little too dark. Anyways, when you're adding effects or filters, if you want to kind of like see the before and after, just click the reset here. So that's how it was. And then just hit Control Z and you can see what you've edited. I'm not going to bother actually for this. The whole point is just to track the seagull, see if we can do that. So let's start our shot wide. And then when we start seeing our seagull right here, I'm just going to increase to 50. That's, yeah, 25. So I'm going to start zooming in right here because I want to have the first second of my clip just be the wide shot. So I'm going to select and add keyframes right here. And there, now I'm going to zoom in 300. We could go crazy and just zoom in like 500, but then we really lose quality. So now I'm positioning my seagull in the middle. I'll let my clip play for a second. Oh, I think it's a bald eagle. Because I can see the black wings. And I'm going to reposition the bird in the center. And as soon as it hits the tree, I'll zoom out. So actually, and that's a cool kind of like way to see if it's going to work. You can just with your left and right keys on your keyboard, you can go frame by frame, see how that looks. So I'm going to add another keyframe. The arrow keys on your keyboard, like left and right, you can move frame by frame to see if the positioning you're adding works. And so now I'm going to select the scale again, and I'm going to bring it back. Now that I've lost the side of my bird, going to bring it back to 100. Reposition everything in its original position. And now let's see if that worked. Here we go. And now we just tracked the flight of a bird. Just to finish off, we'll play that again one more time. Yeah, that's definitely a bald eagle. But yeah, how cool is that? So on audio, again, here is all the stuff you can do in audio and everything that has this little shape right here. Okay, Norman, yeah. Thank you for joining. You can change the pan. Let's say I want all of my sound to start like fully left and then fully right. You can do that. But maybe it'll be a little hard to tell because were you guys able to notice that? Are you wearing headphones? Let's increase the volume a little bit. So I panned my audio from left to right between these two keyframes. Turn the volume up, let's see. Let me know if you guys could tell the difference there. But yeah, so audio keyframes work exactly the same way. You just add keyframe there where I increase my audio level to 12 and 0 right here. So now I will have a fade in audio, and I will have my left to right. Actually, it should be right to left, right? Because the bird is going right to left. So that could be cool. So yeah, audio works exactly the same way as video. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining. I hope that this was fun, and hopefully this will inspire you to go out and record videos and then play around with keyframing, or even, you know, just create your portfolio. I was thinking it could be, let me know what you guys think. We could have a kind of like a monthly challenge where photographers can create a portfolio of their work using LUXEA and keyframing. You know, we could do that because it's just fun, and you guys will be able to have, you know, a portfolio of your work video wise. But if you do go outside and record video and then keyframe it, please share it with me, because it's one of my favorite things to do. Yeah, I'm really happy everyone enjoyed the workshop. And if you have any questions, I think it was Antoine that had a question. Oh, it was Marv. I'll reach out to Marv. Yeah, thank you guys. Hope you guys have a good weekend. We'll post the workshop on the website on our Photofilm community right now. So